Welcome back to another episode of Cape Ann Today with Stephen Hagan covering Rockport, Manchester, and Essex, and Ethan Forman covering the city of Gloucester. We're going to start with Stephen.
Hi, Heather.
Hi. So you have some news out of Rockport.
Yeah, a lot of all the towns in Massachusetts that are considered MBA communities, in other words, towns that are adjacent to MBA rail stations, are required by the state, the Department of Housing and Community Development, to file an action plan. It's due at the end of the month. And what that means is it's a plan, a tentative plan for housing district near the train station. I won't get into the minutiae details about it, but basically I ran a story that ran in today's paper about the status of where towns are. A few have filed, some are going to wait till the deadline. I didn't find anyone that is not going to file. But the thing that was cool that I discovered was that I thought Manchester was really ahead of the curve. You know, they've had a lot of board meetings. They've had a lot of discussion, joint planning board, selectmen, and excuse me. Hey, newsroom, Stephen.
Newsroom.
This is the problem with live television.
I'm
Sort
in
of
a
live
meeting right now. Can I
television.
call you
Heather.
back, please.
Yeah, we're being right in the news.
Thank you.
Watching news happen.
Sorry about that.
You're watching news happens, folks.
Yeah, what do you
Sorry,
got?
I just wanted to touch base with somebody.
Okay.
In any event, what I discovered was that actually Rockport has not only filed their plan, but they've already been approved by DHCD. So that's really good.
Learn that information.
I'm sorry?
Who do you talk to learn that the plan has been filed and approved?
I don't talk to anybody. I just make it up. It usually works better that way. No, in this case, I have a very good contact. He's in Rockport. He is the chair of the Rockport Planning Board. His name is Jason Shaw. He's a clearinghouse for information, all things planning in Rockport.
Okay.
So in any event, that's the main news story I have. A couple of features I'm working on. This is not new, but there's a fellow that grew up in Rockport. His parents, I've been told, live in Gloucester. He is an animator, works out in California. I think he lives in Hollywood. He was associated with the film Marshall the Shell with Shoes On. Anybody's seen it? I've actually, just by coincidence, my daughter encouraged me to see it. So it was really charming. But anyway, he has been nominated, so I've been told, for an Oscar as well as a BAFTA award. So I want to talk to his parents that apparently live in Gloucester.
Just add a little story about this, Stephen.
Of course.
Because we're talking about Ben Wicke, and I know Ben
Right.
Wicke pretty well because he was in my daughter's class. He came to my house to a yard sale when he was about 5 years old. He was wearing spats and a top hat. And I exclaimed about how, wonderful this was. And his parents said, this is his third top hat. He's worn out the other two.
That's good.
He's always been a wonderful child and really.
That's good background.
Yeah, great.
What's his personality like?
Just as wonderful, just funny, imaginative. There's so many things happening in that now it's a large mind. And he's always been that way. He's a great kid. And now he's a great adult. And we're so proud of him.
The last feature I have is actually that was who just called back. There's a new health director in Manchester by the Sea. Her name is Wendy. I forgot her last name. I scribbled here. I can't think of it, but that was my first contact. That's why I really wanted to talk to her so I could get an interview for her. Kind of a feature, but a news story too. She's the new health director in Manchester by the Sea.
Okay,
and that's it.
Thank you. All right, Ethan, you had a front page story on Jeff Worthley, the city council.
How you doing, Heather?
Hi.
Yeah, it's another beautiful day in the seaport here. So this is the case where the sitting city councilor at large has filed a free speech and due process lawsuit against the superintendent and the school committee. And so it seems to have come to some sort of resolution, or not a full resolution, but Jeff Worthley had Councilor Worthley had asked for a preliminary injunction. It's kind of an emergency order to say to the judge, can you rule before a trial on the merits of my asking you to have the schools lift this no trespass order, which I guess the judge found was overbroad. And so this is an extraordinary remedy. If you think about, this is not a trial, there hasn't been a trial, but the judge looked at it and agreed with Councilor Worthley and his attorney, Mark Randazzo of Gloucester, and basically saying that it's overbroad, even given the alleged concern articulated by defendants. And that concern has to do with the about Councilor Worthley. This is from the court documents, going to the high school on when there was voting going on, and talking to a student, and then obtaining, exchanging cell phone numbers, and then have the him texting her about creating some sort of volunteer corps in Gloucester, sort of become much more deeply kind of going into that line. And then later at night, when she kind of declines, I'd love to do it, but I'm really busy, kind of got back to her, sort of describing when he's up and when he's sleeping, and it created concern among the parents, school officials. Worthley then met with the city's attorney and the police chief, was presented a unsigned no trespass order, which was later then executed or issued. And this has been the subject ever since. I mean, from the counselor's point of view, it kind of hampered him from doing normal stuff. I think counselors can go to the high school for various reasons, and they do. So that the judge found it was overbroad. However, this is the caveat: the schools then went and issued another or amended or modified motion, which allows the counselor to go to the high school during certain days. And as a parent, he could go as a parent, has to abide by policies. So it's not entirely the end of the case. And
so there's no limits on his ability to be in the high school. Is that right?
Well, from the reading of the new order, can't go when the school's in session, but can go to like school sponsored events. I don't know, like hockey game, where the general public is generally going. Yeah. There's a National Honor Society induction, graduation, where councils go. So this case is not over, but the way the judge seemed to rule, in my opinion, it was kind of like they felt that barring him for this, even though there's a interest in schools providing a safe environment, there seemed to be, but they didn't rule on this new January 13th no trespass order. So, stay tuned.
In general, what are the concerns here? Well, what are people worried about?
Well, there's competing concerns. I mean, from the counselor's point of view, he wants to be a counselor, wants to be able to speak to constituents, was talking about creating volunteerism, and now he's, facing a no trespass order, free speech and due process. There's a lot of arguments about whether he was given a due process for these orders, for the order to be put in place. The competing issue for the schools is student safety. Should you, in general, solicit contact information for a kid, a minor? And that's the problem. And as a reporter, we meet kids all the time, but you got to go through the coach, or you got to go through the principal. You got to go, you have to go through the officials. It's very important that we follow, as reporters, that we follow that kind of procedure. So those are the two competing interests. I'm not trying to put my thumb on the scale. It's a very sensitive subject. It is very rare in my more than 25 years as a reporter to have a counselor in a lawsuit with the school committee and the superintendent. But so we'll have to stay tuned to see how that, how it plays out.
So you had one tiny detail that caught my eye in your article today, and that was the 5-hour city council meeting on Tuesday night. What happened?
Well, at the end of the meeting, Councilor Grow, Councilor Worthley said, this is basically over, and I'm not going to gloat, but this is, he basically sort of summed up in short the case, and Councilor at Large, his fellow Councilor at Large, Jason Gross, said, wait a second, we've been told we can't talk about it, and there might be something here for us to talk about, and they got into a little dust up. I don't like, it's like people sort of say things back and forth. But in the scheme of things, on a 30,000 foot look at this case, you have a council at large, in a lawsuit with the school committee. Who's on the school committee? The mayor. So it's a very serious thing. I want to be very diplomatic, just trying to report, what I'm seeing. So hopefully, y'all get a sense of what's going on.
Well, thank you. That's a lot. So there is a really interesting story in the city of Gloucester on the harbor. You want to talk about the Marine Science Center?
Yeah, this Maritime Science Education Center that Maritime Gloucester is building as we speak. They're putting the finishing touches on it. And boy, I was really excited. I was like a little kid. I went in there, and this is the kind of thing that I think is going to help Gloucester. Like, it's not a children's museum, it's an education center, but hey, it's a rainy day. Let's go up to Gloucester and go to that nice center. It's a hands-on experience. You get a little mini lobster boat. You can drive the lobster boat with a little radio. There's no ATSI monitors on this mini lobster boat. But however, I used that joke with them. They liked it. There's tanks, a little aquarium. Now, you got to remember that the Maritime Gloucester has a very popular Sea Pocket aquarium, which I haven't been able to go to. And it's only open like May to October. You don't want to put your hands in cold water and, pick up mollusks. Mm-hmm. So they realize that they get the kids coming through, and their aquarium is closed. So they decided to they had some sort of on their lower level, they had some space that they're reconfiguring. Still have their education classroom. They're going to do a plankton lab, so they go out and they scoop up plankton from the harbor, and you can see it under a microscope. Cool. So yeah, so it's going to be really, really cool. They're going to have also have an exhibit on the impact zone. It's called Impact Zone, and that's where you look at the marine debris, the impact of marine debris, microplastics and invasive species, and how that's hurting our maritime life. So they're going to have a ribbon cutting on Friday, today, at 3:30, and tours, and then it'll be open to the public. So they're putting their finishing touches on. They're literally like painting on the walls. I'm sure it's going to look great tomorrow. And it's an attraction for Gloucester. It's good. It's you know what? Fishing is a very vital industry in the seaport, and I think this pays homage to it. So it's not in any way taking away from it. I think it's showing Gloucester the best that Gloucester has to have in the 400th year.
And we have to comment that you have definitely done a really good job covering the city of Gloucester when you can tell an at-sea monitor joke.
Yeah, do you think anyone's going to get that? I said that, and they're like, all right, we can pretend to have Noah here, They told me a very funny thing. The artist is named Brian Murphy of Beverly artist. Mm-hmm. And they tipped the floor of the Maritime Science Education, I want to say Maritime Education Center, and they used Gloucester sand and epoxy. So it's like Gloucester, it's in the floor. Nice. And then the artist painted on it, and he painted a lobster right by the lobster exhibit. And apparently there's a lobsterman who brought in a lobster for their tank and stepped over, and it was so well done. He stepped over it because he thought he was going to step on a lobster. So it's a fun space. I'm sure it's going to be dynamic, and it's really education. It's key education.
Yeah. So there's also some interesting points about that Marine Science Center flooding, right?
Well, yeah, well, it's interesting. We were talking about it. We had a tour, and he started telling me we had 6 inches of water in here. I was like, what? So,
Just last
uh,
week, right?
well, they didn't get any water in last week. He said, like, after Christmas, we had that storm.
Yeah.
So he said that he showed me like the watermark. They built a touch tank in this space. And he showed me the watermark along the rocks, the fake rocks that Michael DaCosta had constructed himself. So the idea is that they want to make their space, the waterfront, more resilient. And they got $100,000 from the Community Preservation Act from the
But
city. That just was approved on Tuesday night. And again, he said they've only seen like one flood in the last 5 years. He's been there, and they had 2.
That was my point. And that's, there's so many conversations about climate change and sea level rise. And here in the Marine Science Center, they're actually witnessing it. And I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's like this is a critical project. I mean, if this thing's gonna be successful, it can't flood.
Yeah. Yeah.
He did tell me that the space is resilient, that it's been designed in a way that it can take the water.
Yeah. No, I just think it was that's where this education happens, in real time. So
Oh yeah.
So it was a good point. And thank you to Michael DaCosta for he's the one who said that, right? He had.
Oh yeah. We were walking through, and at the end, he's like, "Oh, we had 6 inches of water in here." I'm like, "What?"
Yeah. Right.
They said, "Oh, we were at the council last night." This was on Wednesday, so I watched the council, and yep, there they got $100,000.
That's great.
It's very good money, well spent by the Community Preservation Act Committee to help maritime Gloucester be more resilient to coastal flooding.
Well, thank you, both of you, for great stories this week, and we'll see you next week.
Yes.
If the creeks don't rise.
If the creeks don't rise.
Take care, you guys.
Thanks, Heather.
Interested in a sponsorship? Email sponsor@1623studios.org to learn more.